Calvin Castine at Northeastern Clinton Central School. It's the 9th day of May 2011, and we're here in the offices of the Northeastern Clinton Central School Superintendent, Peter Turner.
Good morning, Calvin.
And how many years now, Peter?
This is year 4 for me.
You're completing it or starting it?
Completing it.
Completing the 4th year. Okay. 45 years ago today, I started at Sheridan Iron Works down the, which is now the Kimpex or Susie building down in the village of Champlain.
Good memory.
It's just,
how do you have to remember this date? Just
it was a Monday, 45 years ago, 1966 was a Monday also.
Oh, okay.
Today happens to be a Monday.
I wasn't starting work in 1966.
No, I've already worked. I grew up on a farm, and I did a few other things before I decided to go out into bless the industrial world with my presence. We're here to talk, as usual, about the proposed budget, and we're doing this on Monday the 9th, and on the 16th, you're going to have a hearing with the community.
Correct. A week from today, 6:30 in the high school auditorium.
So we're hoping to run this over the weekend on the 14th and 15th, and if you watch this and it stirs up any unanswered questions, feel free to attend that meeting. Right?
Attend the meeting, yes.
And the entire budget is based on the projected assessment for the year. And I can't say the entire budget, but the part that the people watching are concerned about.
Correct.
Are based, the figures are based on actually last year's assessment, which you've been told aren't projected to change very much. Each individual's circumstances might be a little different out there. I know personally they are. So
yes, and I've heard from some individuals in Moores who actually had their assessment go up this year. Hope everybody realizes it's the town and the county that sets the assessments. It's not the school district.
No.
And if you have a question about your assessment, you should talk to the assessor and find out why your assessment went up. If it went down, you probably aren't going to be too excited or too worried about it, but if it went up, I would encourage you to make an appointment.
I wouldn't, because the more they're paying, the less I have to pay.
Oh, okay. Is that how we're going to play this?
If you went up, live with it. I'm personally going to check into mine, but
I'll point out that that's Calvin's opinion, not necessarily that of the school district.
What the school district does, of course, as everybody knows, is set the budget. So that's the pie.
Correct.
And the assessor decides how that pieces of the pie will be divided up individually. And of course, the assessor doesn't decide. They use a formula to evaluate what each property is worth. That shouldn't be news to anybody watching this, I hope. I will probably let you start.
Okay. Our proposed budget next year is actually $28 million and change. If you want the exact number, it's $28,499,357. That is an increase from the current year budget of 2.6%. However, we are still looking at the estimated tax levy to be a 0% increase for the 4th year, Calvin. I'll plant the seed now. I'm not sure that we can do that another year. We've picked all the low-hanging fruit, and we've cut in many areas. As we go forward, there aren't a lot of areas to cut, and unfortunately each year things tend to increase on us. So we're projecting the tax rate to be $19.31 per assessed per $1,000 of assessed valuation this year. Now, as Calvin alluded, if the assessments do go up, there's a potential that estimate tax rate does go down. And in the past few years since I've been here, there have been a few years where it has actually gone down from what we estimated. So we try to estimate very conservatively, and that way people, if it goes down, they're happy instead of having to tell people it's gone up. So this year we started with the state of New York giving almost every district in the state of New York less tax money, and that hurt many districts, as you've been reading in the paper. We have over $1 million less of revenue projected for next year from the state of New York, and we also have increases in health insurance of over $164,000. Our health insurance typically goes up 6 or 7% a year. We were fortunate this year; it only went up 3.5%. We have contractual salary increases, which obviously will cost us more money next year. We still have 2 bargaining units that we don't have contracts with that we're getting ready to enter negotiations with. And then the employee retirement system and the teacher retirement system both have increased this year. So when it's all said and done, we're short over $2 million when you factor all of those things in.
I can interrupt you just a minute.
Yep.
The TRS, Teacher Retirement System,
Correct.
that went up 15.9%. Is that right?
It is 15.9% this year. Last year it was 11.9. So 15.9% of the teacher's salary we're paying in to the teacher retirement system. And the same with the employee retirement system. This year that's 11.11% of their salaries the district pays into that retirement system. A few years ago, the retirement system, particularly the teachers, there was very little growth or increase from year to year because the stock market was doing very well. And since the last few years, when the stock market has slowed down, the rates that school districts have to pay have gone up tremendously.
I know most businesses, if you put your money in a IRA or a Keogh plan or whatever, you live and die on the market. And if the market goes down, you suffer. But apparently with your unions here, it's a different ball game. You're guaranteeing them an X number of dollars, and if the market goes down, we got to throw it in. Is that how it works?
Well, essentially, you're correct. When the stock market is doing well, the district pays a much smaller percentage on each employee, and when things aren't so well, it does increase. And unfortunately, we don't control that rate. The state of New York says this is what you're paying us for this year, and we don't have a lot of choice except to pay it.
You do as you're told,
You're
right? But that's different than in the business world.
Correct.
Or as I used to tell me in school, the real world.
The real world.
Right.
Okay.
But so we're not living in the real world here sometimes.
Well,
it's
sometimes
the real world.
you're right. But when you're working with unions and negotiated
Right.
contracts, once the contract is ratified, you have to honor the contract.
Right.
So we are short over $2.2 million when you add all that together. And so then you have to figure out, what did we do to close that gap? And one of the things we did is looked at the budget line for line and looked at the history of the budget as far as that particular line. What have we spent this year? What have we spent the last couple of years? And if there was room to trim it, we trimmed those back. That's the easy stuff. We did have an elimination of a 0.6 science teacher, which saves us a little bit of money. We are not purchasing hardly any equipment next year. One of the unique things about an equipment line, you can transfer money out of an equipment line, but you can't transfer it in. So we're going into next year with very little equipment money. So if we have issues with needing to replace something unexpectedly with equipment, we're probably not going to be able to do it in this budget. And then we also have had some energy savings from the capital project over the last few years with new windows and new ventilation systems and new lighting to save us money. In fact, last year there was a company here called Schneider Electric, and they do energy performance contracts, and what they do is they come into a school and they promise you X amount of money that you can save with taking some measures such as replacing lightings or other energy efficiencies. And they wouldn't deal with us because they couldn't find enough to make it worth their while, because one of the things in an energy performance contract, you have to guarantee this to the state education department, the savings that you're going to have in that project. And they, to use that term again, thought that we had picked all the low-hanging fruit. And so I thought, it's unfortunate they didn't want to do business with us, but it's a compliment that they couldn't find enough easy energy savings to make it worth their while. And they said, well, perhaps, in 4 or 5 years or longer, perhaps, as some of these things begin to age, a project might be more viable at that time. But at this time, it wasn't viable. Now, as we looked at other things that increased in cost, Health insurance went up 3.5% this year. Typically, it's been 6 or 7% a year. We were fortunate this year that the Health Insurance Consortium, which is made up of school districts in Essex and Clinton County, was able to use some of their reserves and not increase the premiums as much. So that went up 3.5% versus 6 or 7, which was good news. And as we mentioned a moment ago, the employee retirement system contributions, the teacher retirement systems have gone up, and we need to pay those bills. And then the last few years, we've had some federal money. We had some, for the last 3 years, there's been federal money. Some of it was stimulus money, some of it was Education Jobs Fund money, and next year that money is gone. So that will be another challenge next year. This year we're using over $421,000 of that Education Jobs Fund money to pay for some of the positions in this district. Next year we'll have to decide what happens to those jobs. Do they get absorbed into the regular budget, or are those positions eliminated? And it's 12 positions, and if you added that all up, that's the equivalent of 6.5 full-time people. So next year, I'll say it now, will be a more difficult budget year than this year is. Because one of the things that we were able to do this year is we still have that, see, there's our energy performance, Calvin. We haven't moved enough. So the lights went off.
There we go.
See, we just saved the taxpayers a fraction of a cent by not moving.
Well, probably it costs more to put it back on.
We're not going to go there.
You got to be.
You got to move. That's right.
You got to be like this.
Correct.
So talk. Use some.
I'm not usually a hands person, but I'll try to move a little bit more.
Just for the lighting purposes.
We have the tax cert account that I'm sure you remember. That's when Wyeth challenged their assessment over the last several years, and the district was able to put some money aside, because if they had lost that tax challenge from Wyeth, they would have had to refund taxes to the Wyeth Corporation.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, that's coming to an end, and so that money that's in that tax certiorari account now can come back to the taxpayers. And there's close to just over $1.5 million that was set aside in that account. And this year, we are pulling $685,540 out of that and applying it into the coming budget year. So we're using that as making up some of that state aid that's lost. And the nice thing that the board decided to do is not to just blow that money in 1 year, because not knowing what's going to happen next year, we still have a few years that tax cert money can stay there. That gives us a little bit of cushion going into next year, particularly when there is no federal stimulus money next year. So I think that was responsible on the board's behalf to use a portion of that and not all of that. And I think that's why we're in better situations in many districts in the county, is because we had that money that we were able to pull from.
Okay.
Now, as far as things that we're adding to the budget, we are adding 2 teacher assistants to the kindergarten programs in each building in the district. And the reason that we decided to do that was, instead of hiring an aide and placing an aide with a student in the classroom, that if we put a teacher assistant in the classroom, the teacher assistant can actually teach or reteach, whereas a teacher aide can't. And we're hoping that by having a teacher assistant in the kindergarten classrooms, one in each end of the district, is that individual can help to bring some of those students who are struggling up to the level they need to be sooner than normal. And perhaps this could be a huge savings for us if we can cut down on the number of students who get classified as special education students. Those teacher assistants will pay for themselves very quickly.
This is an ounce of prevention.
We're hoping that it's an ounce of prevention. That's exactly correct. So that means that there are some aide positions. There are 2 aide positions associated with those kindergarten classrooms. So if a student needs an aide next year and they're entering one of our kindergarten classrooms in either end of the district, they would be placed in the classroom where the teacher assistant is. So the teacher assistant would fulfill the role of that teacher aide. And then we also had 1 teacher aide position here at the high school that we funded with the stimulus money that we're not going to fund next year. So there is a net result of 3 teacher aides that will not have positions next year, and we will be creating 2 teacher assistants. And we also are adding a part-time cleaner at Rouse's Point. We're finding that with the increased floor space over there, we're having some difficulty keeping up. And so this would be a part-time person. The advantage of a part-time person from the taxpayer standpoint is this person would not be receiving the health care benefits, which is a tremendous cost to the taxpayers.
Okay.
And then when we look at our real property tax revenue, we're expecting 0% change, as I mentioned earlier, for next year. So hopefully taxpayers are happy with that. I think this budget is a very responsible budget, but I'll plant the seed right now. I'm not sure that a year from now when we're sitting here that I'm going to say to you, Calvin, we have a 0% increase in our tax levy. Because when costs continue to go up and the revenue does not continue to go up, you have to make some choices. And next year we may be looking at some more significant cuts than we are this year.
And we've had some nearby school districts in the county that has hit the fan this year.
Correct. And I think it just depends on the situation in a particular school district. So some of those districts had a difficult time this year. I'm predicting that our difficult time will be next year, unless the governor and the state legislature gives us a significant increase in our aid. But I don't expect that. We're not close enough to the governor's reelection to expect that there's going to be a big aid restoration next year. Now we have a couple of propositions as we do every year. We do have a proposition for library support for $8,800 for each of the libraries in the district. So there are 3 of them, one in Champlain, Morris, and Rouse's Point. That is a $200 increase from last year. So basically, if the taxpayers approve that, we're the conduit that we collect that money and channel that to the libraries. And the expected increase for a taxpayer is 0.051 cent per $1,000 of assessed evaluation if that proposition is approved. And we also have a proposition once again this year to purchase school buses. We'd like to purchase 4 school buses, and what we do is we purchase the buses. We actually borrow the money because the state of New York reimburses us over 5 years. So even if you paid cash, you don't get your state aid on transportation all at one time. So it's spread over 5 years. The nice thing is we're still at the high end of reimbursement. We receive approximately 90% aid reimbursement on our bus purchases.
Why are we still? That obviously means to me that somebody else isn't. Why are we?
Correct. The rates vary, and the rates are set by the state education department. So some districts, for whatever reason, things have changed. Perhaps the wealth of the district has changed, and so the ratio has decreased. We're still at 90%, which is obviously fortunate for us. So there are districts out there who get significantly less of a state aid reimbursement on school bus purchases than we do. Most of our buses, we try to be on a regular replacement. We have several buses in the district that are over 100,000 miles, which isn't terrible for a diesel engine. We have some that are pushing 200,000. And the state transportation department comes in and inspects our buses on a regular basis. And in this district, Alvin, we run them until they die. If they can still pass inspection, we have them on the road. But sometimes it gets to the point where it costs more money to repair a particular bus than it's worth it. And it's not cost effective to pour money into a bus that's having difficulty passing their inspection on a regular basis. So we're hoping to buy 4 school buses, which would be obviously a benefit. I will say that our transportation department is very good. Those buses, we have some that are ready to go down the road now. We auction them, and when we auction them, we don't get a lot for them because they're not the type of vehicle that you could buy for your church group and have it run down the road cost effectively. They're things that get towed out of here for the most part, and they're heading to the scrap dealer most years. So we get our money's worth out of them.
Yeah, well, scrap metal is worth a lot these days. So.
That's right. So
yeah,
we have some buses that are ready to go to the junkyard. Well, we always bid those. Typically, usually there's 2 scrap dealers that bid, but obviously If you needed something for hometown cable
Oh, yeah.
to go out and record the floods or whatever you're doing, Calvin, we'd be happy to sell you one of those buses, and you could find out that we really did run it into the ground, and you could report that to the taxpayers for us.
Yeah, I could verify it. Do you know roughly what kind of gas mileage a bus gets?
Well,
on a typical bus?
they're all diesel, but the mileage isn't great.
Oh, diesel mileage.
It's
I can't use gas mileage. Fuel mileage.
fuel mileage. Off the top of my head, I would guess 8 to 10. It's not significant. It's pretty low because you're carrying around a lot of weight. And one of the things that we always get criticized for is people see buses running down the road empty, and they say, "Oh my goodness, they're my tax dollars." But at any given time, you're likely to see a bus that's empty. I mean, if a bus leaves here at 2:45 with 40 students on it, granted, at some point in that run, you might see that bus with 5 children on it. And I'll point out to the taxpayers, over the last couple of years, we've eliminated 6 bus runs in the district. So we are filling our buses to greater capacity than we have in the past. And there was a memo from the State Education Department just last week that said that school districts could do what we're doing. You could overbook, because apparently there's been a lot of complaints across the state of New York about buses not being filled to capacity, and some districts assign every student to a bus, even if they don't ride the bus. So you might have 60 students assigned to that bus, and in reality there might only be 15 students on it, because districts have said, well, we have to assign everybody there goes the light. We have to assign everybody to a bus. In this district,
Just ignore me.
Yeah.
Listen to Peter and ignore me.
yeah, the maestro here
There we
is
go.
trying to orchestrate things. In this district, we do assign more students than actually ride the bus. And when we do our survey 2 times a year, we find out frequently that on many of the bus runs, it varies. A lot of them, there's more students riding in the afternoon than in the morning. And that's because sometimes parents drop them off on their way to work. I see students out here getting dropped off at 7 o'clock in the morning. The parent drops them off. The student doesn't want to ride the bus for whatever reason, but some of those students might ride the bus in the afternoon. So it's difficult to have a exact number of how many are on the bus at any given time, because we can't necessarily predict what an individual student is going to ride, but we do assign more students than the bus has capacity.
And you have a senior that might bring his siblings or whatever, and seniors still have driving privilege.
Correct. Yes, we have student parking right out in front of our building here. One interesting thing I've noticed this year, that I don't know why it would be, but there's more parking spaces out there this year.
Parents are saying.
There may be parents saying, get on that bus.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, our enrollment has continued to go down slightly. I looked at our enrollment figures the other day. We're down 24 students since September in the district.
Wow.
And it would be nice if those 24 students were in one spot, we could eliminate a position. If all 24 of those students were in 3rd grade in Moores, it would be easy. But unfortunately, those 24 students are spread across K-12, so you lose 1 or 2 in a grade level. That's not enough to reduce your teachers. But over the last few years, we've lost a couple of hundred students in the district, and we continue to monitor that enrollment to adjust accordingly. And next year, you'll see some positions that get reduced. We were able to restore some positions in the last 2 years that we had reduced with that federal money. Next year, when that federal money is going back or going away, there are some teaching positions in the district that will drop from full-time to 0.8 or perhaps even 0.6 because of the enrollment decreases in the district.
Now, do you juggle students? You've got 2 elementary locations now. We used to have 3. Newcomers to the area, if you've got, if putting 3 extra kids in Rouse's Point would suddenly mandate another extra class at that level, you'd send them to Moores if they had room there?
Well, we would do that, Calvin, if they're in the middle of the district. If somebody really moved into Rouse's Point and they're on Lake Street, we wouldn't advocate sending them all the way across the district to Moores. But
you might ask somebody in between.
Champlain.
Would you ask somebody in between if they consider?
Actually, a year or 2 ago, we did send a letter to the 4th grade moving into 5th grade in Moores if anybody was interested in switching buildings. nobody stepped forward, because most people, they have their allegiance to the building, and once they start in the building, they become fond of that building and don't want to change. But if somebody moved in the town of Champlain and it's 3 or 4 students and they're all elementary, yes, we do look at the elementary enrollment in each building, and we might decide that this family really should go to one building over the other because of the class sizes.
Yeah, and in addition to allegiance to the building, is also classmates. I mean, this kid who's going to school in Moores or whatever, lives in Champlain, going to school in Moores, all of his friends are there in his class. To suddenly decide to go to Rouse's Point or whatever as his own choice isn't going to happen too often.
Isn't going to happen.
You're not going to want to leave your friends behind.
But more often than you might expect, we do have students that the families move from one end of the district, and they in fact do switch buildings mid-year. And even though it's difficult, those students survive.
Well, yeah.
They make new friends, and in fact, in some regards, it might put them in a better position when they hit the middle school, because they'll know students in both ends of the district. But you're right, nobody likes to switch their building when they're used to that particular building. And the other thing that we have this year that's interesting is we have a proposition, Calvin, to change the way that we elect our board members. Currently, if you want to run for the Board of Education, you turn in a petition, and on that petition, you specify which specific seat you are looking to run for. This year, we have 2 seats are up for election. Normally, it would only have been 1. We have a 5-year term that Steve Novacek is in, and his term expires, so that position is open. We also have a 2-year unexpired term because a few months ago Randy LeCount resigned his position. So we have 2 seats to fill on the Board of Education. And what's happened this year almost makes the argument for the change that we'd like to do. We have one person running for the 5-year seat, that's Donna Baumel, and she's run unopposed. And then the other seat, the 2-year unexpired term of Randy LeCount, we have 3 candidates for. We have Steve Novacek has decided to run for that position, Orville Netto is decided to run again, and Bill Forkey has decided to run. So the proposed change that's on the budget this year, or on the ballot this year, would be to give the seats to the top vote getters. So instead of saying I'm targeting Calvin Castine's seat because I know I can beat him, we'd be saying,
beg your pardon?
people would be saying, yes, I want to be on the Board of Education, and whoever would get the highest votes would get those positions. Now, this does not affect this year's outcome because this has to be approved. It would be next year. If this existed in the current year, that would mean that the 4 people that are running, the 2 top vote getters would get the seats. So whoever had the most votes would get the 5-year seat. The number 2 vote getter would get the 2-year unexpired term.
See, I would think that it would be just the opposite as far as applying to this year, because there's definitely a distinct, they're not both running for 5-year positions. One is actually running for a 2-year position.
Correct.
But in the overall picture, it's like when we vote for our town councilman, it's the top 2 vote getters, and that makes sense. Your top 2 people might be running against each other.
Correct.
So this doesn't make sense. And I did see Donna Baumel over the weekend at the Fun Day at Champlain, and she's just about ready to declare victory here.
She's going to declare victory?
Since she's unopposed.
Yes, I predict that she will be successful as well. The other position, I'm not ready to declare a winner yet. We'll wait until a week from tomorrow to decide who that winner is.
Yeah.
So if taxpayers supported this proposition, a yes vote would mean yes, we want to change to the new system where people are getting elected not based upon a seat, but because they have the most votes. And if you like the system to continue it as it is, you would vote no on that proposition. So the taxpayers get to decide. And once if, for instance, the taxpayers vote this year to make that change continues until such time as it's put up for vote again to perhaps go back to the current system. So we'll let the taxpayers decide which system they prefer.
It occurred to me that saying taxpayers doesn't really describe the people necessarily who are voting. Because somebody who owns property here in the area and doesn't live here could be a taxpayer, and they're not going to vote on this. And somebody could pay no taxes, because the STAR program or whatever. If you rent, you're really paying taxes because the person renting to
Right.
you is. But so we use that term taxpayer, but
It's really residents.
Yeah.
When we are voting on the school budget, it's people that reside here that get to vote. And you're right,
Right.
they might not pay taxes, and I guess that goes back to our founding fathers who said you didn't have to own property to be able to vote. And I know that's a sore point for some people, that if you have a big tax bill and somebody has no tax bill, but that's the system we live in.
yeah, unless like in Essex County, they have weighted votes there as far as county business. So somebody representing a town with a little population doesn't have the impact of somebody representing a town with a big.
Correct.
So it's weighted
It
voting,
is.
but that would be a little unmanageable.
Yes. So here,
It's
anybody
residents,
that
yes.
resides can vote, and let's go into that. That's next week. That's May 17th is the budget vote.
As you're watching this, unless you're watching it on the internet, which will be should be available later today on the 9th.
Okay.
But after you're watching this on the weekend on cable, it's this week. It's coming.
Yes, it is next Tuesday, May 17th. In this district, we vote from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. There are two locations. Moore's Elementary has a polling place, along with this location here in the middle school small cafeteria. If you're not certain where you fall, you're new to the district, you don't know which election district you're in, call the district clerk, Eileen Dupre. She's my secretary. She can take your address and tell you which end of the district you should be in. You have to be registered to vote, and so you need to register through the county. You can register locally, but you would need to do that in the next few days. If you are going to be out of town, you could get an absentee ballot, and we've sent many of those out at this point. We mail them. However, we're so close to the election. If you need one because you can't physically come vote next week, you need to come in and see Eileen to physically get a copy of that, because the time is too short for it to be certain that it gets to you and you get it back to us in time.
So if they use an absentee, I know, whenever we see that in the state, federal, even local, they have to be postmarked by a certain date. So is it possible that do the absentee ballots have to be here by the 17th, or could they have to be in the mail? Or
Yes, they have to be back to us by the 17th.
So it's not like postmarked and they come in later and they counted a couple days later.
Yeah, we need to have them when it's time to count the ballots, which is a week from tomorrow or May 17th. To vote, you have to be a United States citizen, you have to be 18 years of age, and you have to reside in the district for the past 30 days, and no, you don't have to own property.
We've all experienced, I say all, although I know a large percentage of people don't vote that are eligible to vote in the town, federal, state elections. But those of us who have voted have experienced these lovely new voting forms and machines and so on. What will the voting system be here at the school?
We'll still be using the machines this year. I think this is the last year we'll be able to use
The
those as a
old-
school district.
the old
Correct.
machines?
The old lever machines will still be in use this year.
And starting next year, you think we'll be going to the...
Correct. And those are more expensive.
New
You have to
improved-
pay. You have
Oh,
to
yeah.
pay for those sheets. They're 50 or 60 cents a piece, and you're supposed to have 2 or 3 for every potential voter. So that will increase our costs when we have to go to that new system, new and improved system.
Yeah. Just because of a few hanging chads in Florida, we've improved the system to now.
That's correct, Calvin.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you talk about newcomers. They have to be registered. Where do they register? Can they register to vote in the school without registering to vote in the town, or do they just go to the Board of Elections and?
Well, typically what we do when they come into this office, we give them the county registration, so they would be registered for the state of New York for everywhere they go. But yes, if an individual only wanted to vote on a school budget, they could come and have individual registration for this election only. The only disadvantage is you wouldn't be able to vote in state or county elections
Until such a time
until
as-
you registered there. And actually, over the years, we had several people. Now we're down to very few people who are registered specifically to vote in the district.
Now, the qualifications are 18-year-olds. Now, do the teachers corner the 18-year-olds and say, put your mark here? Or how does that happen here with students?
I guess I don't know the answer to that, Calvin. Certainly, any student would be encouraged, but we don't go into the Social Studies 12 class and march them up here to vote. In fact, a few years ago...
Here's your yes lever.
Yes. A few years ago, I did go into the Social Studies 12 and did talk about the budget. And actually, I haven't done it since because of that in the back of my mind, not wanting to have the perception that I'm down there strong-arming the students that get up there and vote and vote yes, because we can't tell people to vote yes anyway. And so we've eliminated that civics lesson of getting an individual budget presentation to the seniors. Obviously, they can come to any board meeting that they desire and hear the same information. So yes, some of our students do vote. But we're not marching them, and we're not granting extra credit for them to vote or letting them leave early if they vote. That's purely an individual's decision whether they want to take part.
Obviously, they're encouraged to vote, but not encouraged in which direction to vote.
Correct. Yes, we're not allowed to tell them what to vote.
And justifiably
Well,
so, I might add.
yes, I mean, people have their own opinions, and any given day they might decide yes or no.
That's right. You notice I've become more animated. So
Yes, the lights haven't gone off in a few minutes.
Okay. Now, I've got to wonder about your. When we first started here, you said our budget is $28 million and change. Well, the change is $500,000.
Well, correct.
$28.5 million.
$28.5 million.
Is that the most it's ever?
Yes, that's the highest it's ever been.
So if you're keeping records at home, this
Yes, unfortunately, just like your state or federal budget, it creeps up, or your town or your county, your village budgets typically increase.
Okay, now
I'd like to stay away from 30 million, but I know within the next few years, unfortunately, we're going to get there.
it's going to happen. Now you were able to come out to the exact dollar based on last year's assessment and a rough projection. Chances are the assessments are going to go up. Whether it's 1% overall or whatever, they're going to go up a little bit. So that $19.31 before you get into the proposals for the school buses and the libraries is liable, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but liable to go down.
It could possibly go
a
down.
dollar or two per thousand. Or
Well,
penny per two, not dollar per two.
Yeah,
but a
pennies, not dollars.
Penny per two per
I would
thousand.
love it to go down dollars. And if you look back at some of our projections the last few years for what we projected in May and what actually showed up in your mailbox in September, there has been a decrease in some of those years, but it's pennies, not dollars.
Yeah, no. It's pennies per thousand that hopefully add up to dollars.
Correct.
Yeah. So how did you manage to do that, to come out? It's like, I think I've used this analogy before, back when I was a sophomore in high school, which is, as we know, more than 45 years ago, which was 49 years ago, I think, now I think about it. I was doing my algebra, in the back of the book was the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And there was your thing, and the teacher was more interested in how you got that answer than, so the answer was back there so that you could self-correct and get it done right. So you wouldn't have to make the wrong answer and not find out till the next day. If you get the wrong answer, you keep trying to do it the right way. So it sounds like here you came up with, our answer is $19.31.
Well,
how are we going to do it?
Correct, because one of the goals of the Board of Education is not to have an increase on that tax levy. And so if you keep it steady, that would be the same tax rate as you had last year. You're right, and so then it's all the number crunching to make it come out to that projected tax levy.
So you came back and you got, we came in under, so let's see. Well, we can give the superintendent a little more dollars because we were under.
No.
Okay.
It could be a good plan, but with all the increases that we talked about coming in under really wasn't likely to be a problem for
Yeah.
us, because
So then you kind of adjusted everything proportionately to.
correct. And that's when we went through those line items. You know, if you cut 1,000 here, 1,000 there, you get that number to come out where you want it to come out.
Or, yeah, well, we want it to come out.
And if we
yeah.
want, and obviously
Yeah.
we'd like it to go down, but
Right.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
we have a lot of fixed costs in the school district. And next year, I'm sure we'll be paying more for fuel oil or any other item. You know, food costs go up, employee costs go up, and unfortunately, you either have to get more from the taxpayers or
Yeah.
have a smaller program. And I think if you look at this district and compare it to other districts, we don't have a lot of fluff positions in the district. You know, we don't have huge music programs or technology programs. You know, we have good programs. They're just not necessarily Cadillac programs that you might find in other districts. We're driving the Chevy or the Ford here.
Well, I drove a Ford to get here, so.
Oh.
Eliminated .6 of science teacher. That's what, 3 classes out of 5?
Correct.
Dave?
Actually, that's a retired teacher who's worked for us for a couple of years, and we hired this person because we couldn't find a physics certified person. And we were fortunate in one of the hires this year, we were successful in finding somebody with a physics certification. So by shifting some classrooms around, we can use his physics certification and still teach the classes that we have.
Okay. Would every voter have gotten this budget notice, or how does that sent out?
They should have. We send them to the post office, and they should be going to every box in that town or that village. Now, if by chance they've never seen this and they're looking at this, you could stop in any of the buildings to pick one up, or if you went to the district website on the district office page, you could click on budget newsletter, and this same document is on the web page.
Now, so every box, so if it's, we have a lot of non-residents, particularly Canadians, and not picking on Canadians, but you know, they like to use the American post office, so they may not even have a home here. They just, you know, come down, have a U.S. post office. It would also go to them, and you can't pick and choose
yes.
because you don't know
Correct. Who's in that box?
Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah, you can't say, now post office, go find out where they really live and decide whether you're going to.
Whether we're going to, and I'm sure if you went to the post office last week, you probably could have found these in the trash. But we're obligated to inform
Yeah.
the taxpayers, and that's our way of informing them. Also, later this week, we'll be mailing. There's a small postcard that the state of New York says we have to send every taxpayer, so that will be going out in the next few days. So you'll be getting a postcard from us talking about the budget and the vote, but that's mandated by the state of New York, so we do it.
So every resident now, let's talk, because you use that taxpayer again, but it's the taxpayers who really are concerned with the budget. But every resident now, we have people in our school district or in our town here, like I'm thinking up at Route 9, they're in the Shazy school district, but they've got a Champlain address. So they would probably be getting one of these.
That's an interesting question. I would have to check on that, Calvin.
Yeah, because the Shazy district comes down, I think, as far as the McCrae Road, the McCrae and Gaudette Road, on a certain side there, because I know on this side of Honeymoore's Corners, it is part of the Shazy district. Coopersville is part of that, is Shazy district. But on the other side of that coin, you've got we
There's
must
some
have some
taxpayers in Altona as
in
well.
Altona or
Or
Shazy.
some in Shazy, correct.
Yeah. How do they get notified? Obviously, we can't send one to everybody in Altona, can't send everyone to everybody in Shazy, because we've only got a relative handful.
We must be targeting those, Calvin, because you're right. That's a good
And
point.
West
We
Shazy-
do
West
not
Shazy post
send
office, I know.
enough to Shazy to cover every box in Shazy or Altona.
And
So
West Shazy is a post office. I know Scioto's, I think, the West Shazy mailing address. So those people in particular, if you're watching this and you're not on that mailing list, they should contact the schools so that they become on that mailing
Correct.
list. If you're in this district and you're not getting the literature that you're entitled to, I'd say contact the school, because again, we can't. I hope we don't send one to everybody in West Shazy with the West Shazy mailing address, or everybody with a Shazy.
No,
or
I know
mailing
that we
address.
don't, because we don't have enough to
Right.
cover those entire towns.
Yeah. So, well, you could use your voter registration, I guess, for part of that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who's never
Never
bothered
voted,
to,
correct.
might still want to get this
Correct.
information.
Well, we do our best to get it to the residents so that the residents can make an informed decision on May 17th.
See, I guess you stopped using that taxpayer already. Okay, central administration went up just a little bit. Business administration, I see, went down about 10,000. Whenever I see it going down, I wonder what happened. Business administration, that would be like
Would be the
Robin Bouye, that flew. She's
Jennifer Bouye, the
Jennifer
business
Bouye, excuse me.
manager, and some of the account clerks that work with her. You know, this is back to what you were saying a few minutes ago. You know, you adjust things by looking at what you've spent in the past, and sometimes you're able to cut back for whatever reasons. And that's why sometimes you do see that there's a decrease.
Yeah, I see, like even in operation and maintenance, surprisingly, there's about a $13,000 or $12,500 decrease there.
Once again, that's some of that pencil sharpening to, you know, you look at particularly, you know, supply codes to see what you're using and cut back where you can.
Now I see in teaching regular school, there's about a $300,000 decline, but over here you just said you were limited to 0.6 of a teacher. That obviously is not 0.6 of a teacher. There's $300,000 decline. Is there other retirements?
But there's other things in that budget. That's not salary alone. That
Okay.
would be supplies and textbooks and those types of things as well.
And is it teaching occupational? This line here, the 697 occupational education went from 697 to 799,000.
That's our CV Tech students.
Okay. So, how do we determine that? We don't know. Do we know ahead of time how many kids we're sending to CV Tech next year?
Once again, that's an educated guess, Calvin, because you're right. This year we do have more students that in their schedule requested to go to CV Tech, and we provide them that opportunity. But that is a fluid number, because if some of those students then decide not to go to CV Tech, or if somebody else came along and there was still room in CV Tech, they'd be afforded that opportunity. So budgeting is not always a precise science. We try to get it as close as we can, but there's a lot of educated guesses that go into any budget.
Okay, you said room in the CV Tech. Let's say we've got 50 kids this year that decide they want to be, I know hair stylist is one of the courses there.
Correct.
50 kids this year decide they want to do it, and all of a sudden all the other schools have, so BOCES would adjust their staff based on when do we need to let them know.
Correct. We give them estimates in the springtime. We know we've already given them projections, but you're right, they have the same budgeting challenge that we have. You know, do they have enough students in a particular program to warrant continuing that program, or do they need to hire an extra teacher or a teacher assistant? They have a difficult challenge in making their budget projections as we do.
So if in the fall suddenly a new student comes in, or some student decides, you know, I really would like to, I've thought about it all summer and that's what I want to do, so at that point it would be based on their availability.
Correct. It would.
If they do decide this year that they want to do that next year,
They would be programmed into the numbers. Correct.
they would get in there.
But if some student came in September and wanted to join cosmetology, and we checked with CV Tech and they were maxed out, CV Tech would say, I'm sorry, we don't have room in this program. But I'm sure they would be more than happy to offer another program.
Yeah.
You know, if the student had
Yeah.
plan B. What else are
Right.
you interested in? Heavy equipment.
Something,
something,
cosmetology or heavy equipment.
Yes. I can't decide which one I'm better at, but
Yeah, okay. So, this time of the year, if a student is thinking of what they want to get into one of those programs, now is the time to decide, because next year would be on a...
Correct. Actually, the students have met with their guidance counselors by this point, and they're working on the master schedule for all of our courses for the fall at this point.
Okay, what does undistributed mean in this category down here? That is obviously distributed because it's in the budget, but...
Well, as you see, there's things like debt service and employee benefits. I'm not sure exactly why it gets labeled that. It's part of our computer program, and if Jennifer were sitting here beside me instead of you, she would give you an answer very quickly. Unfortunately, I don't know the origin of why things are listed and undistributed. But that's an item I'll work on for next year, Calvin. So if you ask me that question next year,
Jennifer here.
Jennifer, what was my answer supposed to be last year?
Okay, so the debt service principal, the current budget is 2.225. Next year's up to 2.3. That means we're paying back more of the principal. Is that
correct?
And then, so because of that, as we pay back more of the principal, the debt service on the interest rate is going to go down because we have a smaller principal, and so the amount we're paying in interest is going down.
Correct.
Kind of what I thought. I think that's about it. So, if you want to summarize or have any final thoughts.
I guess I would just summarize by saying that May 17th is when we vote in this district and across the state of New York. We have a budget that is $28,499,357. It is a slight increase, but we're looking at a zero increase on the tax levy, and we do believe that this is a responsible budget that we hope that the residents in this district will support.
And one of the things that was included, and I got to find it in what page it is here, is that in the back of this little booklet is the proposed budget, and there's a contingency budget. In years past, you might vote 2-3 times, and finally the board would say, well, if it doesn't pass this time, we're going to an austerity budget. But the contingency budget, or if I may still use that terminology of austerity budget, has already been determined. So
correct. The state requires you to identify what would be the impact of this budget not being accepted by the taxpayers. And you'll see, in fact, this is the postcard that will be going to people later this week. And it tells you some assumptions that we've made if you needed to go to the contingency budget, some things that you wouldn't fund. For instance, equipment, summer school, field trips, sports. Now, that's to say that you would not necessarily eliminate them, but make reductions in those areas, so that we've already thought about where would you cut to get from the proposed budget to a contingency budget if we needed to go to a contingency budget.
And usually it works out that there's not a whole lot of savings, and what can happen is I think the aid formula is altered a little bit when you're on this austerity budget, where sometimes school can actually make less money from the state than they would if it was a regular proposed budget passed. That's been my finding in talking to other of your predecessors in past years. So that's just my understanding. Okay, so it's May 17th.
That is correct.
And it's
from
8,
11 a.m.
8.
to 8 p.m. It's in the Moore's Elementary Gymnasium, and it's also in the middle school small cafeteria on this end of the district. If you have a doubt on which polling place to go to, please call the district office, and the district clerk, Eileen Dupre, can help you figure out which end of the district you need to be in. Because you don't get to vote on both ends.
No, you can't, unless you're real sneaky. This isn't Chicago here where you can vote.
That's right.
2-3
Vote
times.
early, vote often, right?
Yeah. That's a Tuesday, obviously. So the 17th is a Tuesday. And point out to people in other areas of the
hometown cable channel 24 viewing area that I do this year at Northeastern because years ago Mr. de Grand Prix agreed to do it with me, and obviously it's a concern to me as a resident and taxpayer here in the
voter.
school district and and a voter. So it's got a personal interest to me, but I'm also willing to do this in our surrounding school districts if
You made that offer
invited.
last year. Did anybody take you up on that?
Nobody haven't. So, but I just want to let people know there, saying, how come he's doing it for Northeastern, but he's not doing it for the Shazy or Northern Adirondack? I'm more than willing to do it. So
We would love to share the spotlight with other
Yeah.
districts to put them on the hot seat for an hour to grill them.
that's right. In the dark sometimes.
Yes, in the dark
in the-
sometimes.
a money saving lighting system here. Well, thank you, Peter Turner.
Thank you, Galvin Castine.
All right. And the next time I see Tina Turner, I'll say hello.
Give her my regards.
All right.
Thank you very much.